Hey there, this is Brother Matt Ridener. Miss Teresa asked me to preach a message and put it on YouTube. It's probably a little bit more teaching than preaching, but we'll start in 2 Corinthians chapter number 10, verse number 5. It says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. As I was reading this, it made me think a little bit about this dog we've got. She's a small dog. She's not very bright. She's a little insignificant dog. She's not a big German Shepherd or Doberman Pinscher or anything like that that's going to strike fear in anybody or scare them. And most people, whenever they see the dogs, they talk about how she's a cute dog or whatever. Well, this dog, when we bought her a few years ago, and she was just a little pup, and she was eat up with worms. So we had to get medicine, had to treat her, take care of her, and kind of nurse her back to health and stuff like that. But when we first got the dog, I made the decision that, this dog was not going to sleep with us. It's going to sleep in her own crate, not in our bed, all that stuff. So when we first got her, we would always put her in her crate, lock the door at night, and then when we woke up in the morning, we'd let her out of her crate and go on. Well, she always stayed in her crate with no problem, and so eventually we stopped even shutting the door behind her on the crate and just leaving it open, and she would, for a few nights, she'd come and try to jump in the bed with us, but we'd get on to her and tell her no, we'd get back in her crate, and she'd go back in her crate, and it's no big deal. Well, after a while, one morning I woke up and the dog was laying in bed between me and Miss Valerie, and so she kind of pushed the limits till she got in bed, till she got to sleep with us. And I don't think that was probably the first night that she jumped in bed with us. I'd say that she probably jumped in bed and lay there for a little bit, and then one of us tossed or turned or something like that, and she got scared and jumped out of the bed and got back in the crate and kept on going a little bit more and a little bit more until eventually she just slept the whole night in the bed with us. But in 2 Corinthians chapter number 10, verse 5, the Bible tells us to take every thought into captivity. So why does it tell us to do this? Well, one of the reasons that it tells us to do this is every sin begins with a thought. And every time I sin, every time you sin, every time I backslide, it begins with a thought. Every time anyone else backslides, and you say, but you're a preacher, you're not supposed to backslide. Well, unfortunately, I do. So is your pastor, so is his wife, so is your Sunday school teacher, so does the deacons and his wife, and so do all the preachers, and so do you. We all sin, we all backslide, and every time we do, it begins with a thought. And see, think of David, King David. The Bible tells us that he was a man after God's own heart. Even history tells us how great of a king he was. But David had sin in his life, and one of the main ones that we think of is the sin with Bathsheba. And we know the story. David walks out on the balcony, he sees Bathsheba bathing on the roof, he looks at her and he thinks, man, she's pretty, I've got to have her. And that's where his sin began. It began with a thought, and then it progressed and progressed, and eventually he commits that sin with Bathsheba, and just a long list of sins afterwards and a big effect on his family. We can think of Joseph. We know Joseph, he was his dad's favorite. We know the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors. Well, his brothers sinned by selling him into slavery, and it began with a thought. They thought, hey, Joseph's dad's favorite. Dad likes Joseph more than he does the rest of us. We've got to do something about it. And so it began with a thought, and that's where the sin took off. Abraham, when he sinned with Hagar, it began with a thought. He thinks, I know God promised us a child, but I'm getting pretty old. I don't know how much longer we have until that for God to make do on this promise. And then Sarah comes and says, well, maybe you should go this route with Hagar, and he thinks, well, that's not a bad idea. I'll just go ahead and go that way, and I'm sure that God will understand. But again, it was a sin that began with a thought. That's why it's so important for us to bring each thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Now, every thought's not a bad thing. No, many good things have started with a thought. The car was created because someone had an idea. The light bulb was created because someone had an idea. Our church was started because someone had an idea. So every thought is not bad, but we have to bring them to the obedience of Christ. And in captivity, the obedience of Christ to see if it's something that will help us or something that will hinder us and make us stumble. So the problem is, much like our crazy dog, sin doesn't start out huge. It starts out as something small, something that doesn't look like it's going to hurt us, and we kind of nurse it, we kind of feed it and go along. And we've all seen that one kid that's a brat. It's just he or she, they refuse to share their toys. They smack their parents. Whenever mom and dad tells them to pick up their toys, they yell no, and everybody giggles and talks about how cute it is that they do that stuff. And it may be cute now, but eventually there's going to get to be a day where it's no longer cute. As they grow older and they get bigger, it's not cute anymore, but at that point, it's too late to do anything about it. I know, much like that child, that sin starts small and then it gets really big really quickly. See, we set boundaries for a dog when we first got her, but she slowly pushed those boundaries until she got her way. Now, you may set boundaries for your sin. You might say, I'll only do this one time. I'll only drink or say or do or think this once. And for starters, to begin with, your sin will stay within those boundaries. Now, it'll stay within that cage you've built for it. But then, when you aren't really paying attention, for long you'll look around and your sin has gotten out of that cage that you've built for it, and it's moving around in your life freely. And one morning you'll wake up and you'll find that sin's right there beside you, waiting for you to get up, and you'll wonder how it got there. And then you'll remember that it wasn't always a big thing, and then you nursed it and you fed it, and now suddenly it's overpowering you. So as I think about this, do you know how I could have guaranteed that the dog would have never gotten into bed and slept with us? Well, it's simple. By not getting a dog. If I didn't have a dog, then I wouldn't have a dog to jump in bed and sleep with us. It's the same with sin. You want to know how to keep alcohol from ruining your life? Don't start drinking. You want to know how to keep immorality from destroying your marriage? Don't let it in your marriage. How do you keep gossip from destroying your church? Don't gossip. Don't bring it into the church. It's that simple. People say, well, it can't be that simple. It really is that simple. One last story about our dog. We went on a hike at the Cumberland Falls a little while ago. It was a beautiful day, perfect day for a hike, so we go out there and we have a really great time. Now, when we hike, I usually wear pants and hiking boots and calf-length socks because I would get less bars and ticks and chiggers that way, as opposed to if I wore tennis shoes and shorts. So we go hiking, we have a good time, we come back, everybody comes home, we get in, we take our showers and stuff like that, and I check myself real good for ticks like you're supposed to, and then no ticks, and later that night, laying in bed, and the dog jumps up in bed with us. No big deal. Honestly, at this point, we don't even fight it. She just jumps up in bed if she wants to, and that's that. Well, it wasn't long until I felt something crawl up on my side. So I reached down, I fell under my shirt, and sure enough, there's a tick. So the thing is I checked myself good for ticks, no ticks. Val checked herself good for ticks, no ticks. So the tick came from the dog. Didn't come from one of us, it came from the dog. And it's the same way with sin. See, we make sure that we keep the dangerous sin away from us. None of us is going to invite a serial killer to live with us. None of us is going to invite this big, scary looking dangerous sin into our lives that we know is going to destroy our life, or our testimony, or our ministry, or our walk with Christ. However, we let a small sin into our life, and then we put it in this cage, but before long, it gets out of the cage, and then it wanders around, and it's not long at all before it's absolutely wreaked havoc on our lives, all because we didn't bring it into captivity. Now, as a result, something in that sin will suck the life right out of our Christian walk, will suck the lifeblood right out of our ministry, our marriage, our testimony, all that, all because we let one sin into our life that we didn't bring into the captivity of the obedience of Christ.